senior physiotherapists here as well. So even I can learn from you people. I have few questions for you all. So if you have pen or paper with you or any digital device to answer these questions, what makes a good healthcare professional? How do you make a positive impact on your patient's life? How do you instill self-belief in another person? What are the common questions from your patients with pain? How do you tackle common attitudes and beliefs related to pain? So these are certain questions I have made, and I want each of you to answer these questions. I want to know you people's experience as well while discussing about these questions post webinar. So what is effective communication? Effective can be used to educate and de-threaten certain health, actually de-threaten certain health related conditions, caring towards the patient. And patients should feel, we should make them feel comfortable. We should create a comfortable environment for the patient. We should respect the patient's privacy. We should always ask permission before asking any sensitive issue or before invading the personal space of the patient. We should actually go rapport the patient, should never interrupt patient. That is the key component in the effective communication. So we should try to listen, listen and listen. It's the effective component. Listen to listen to the patient, look exercise, ask for the functional affection. Ask, it should be open-ended question. Do not ask close-ended question. And you should give clear and concise instruction. You should never give a complex instruction to patient. And always try to summarize what you have heard or what you have already listened from the patient. So frequent summaries, clarification, active listening, an important part of the communication. It can create fear, confusion, anxiety. It can encourage resistance to lifestyle changes and healthy behavior. The patient should trust you. The patient should have good personal connection with you. Then only patient will listen to your instruction. Then will be a restriction, conflict, and intolerance can be emotional. And we should understand the patient's perception. We should understand their level of literacy, the context. If the patient is illiterate, the language, the cultural factors, so those things we really need to consider. The literacy level. Accordingly, we need to frame our consultation style. And if the patient has certain cultural barriers, there are certain cultural barriers, gender issues. Many female patients are not very comfortable with male therapists. We need to consider those factors as well. Always use multiple tools for communication. Just do not use verbal or written. Use IT, information communication technology also for the better communication with the patient. So these are the domains of effective communication. The written communication, non-verbal, presentation skills. Presentation skills matters a lot. how you present yourself in front of the patient. The patient should feel empathy. The patient should feel partnership. You should act as a facilitator to the patient. You should not have any authoritative personality. You should tell patient that I'm here to care for you and I'm here to make you feel comfortable. Then make the patient understand that you are there to make him or her be comfortable. So side to side sitting arrangement is preferred rather than front to front. Non-verbal communication not, then patient education, compassion. We should show compassion towards. So has three subcategories. So one is cognitive empathy, compassionate empathy. Cognitive empathy is when I just like believe what you are saying. So that is cognitive. I believe what you are saying. I believe your feeling. And the second is emotional empathy. Emotional empathy is normally like the pain is I feel your pain. Like that is the, feeling the pain is emotional empathy. Like I can feel your pain is in my heart. This is the statement. Your pain is in my heart. So that is an emotional, like accepting the other person's feeling is an emotional empathy. And compassionate is beyond cognitive and emotional. We are actually compassionate to provide and health related services towards patients. Cultural awareness, there are cultural awareness like Indian, American, other cultures which pain level, the pain perception level differs from culture to culture. Personal connection. We should build a good rapport with people. We should try to make good connection to build confidence and the trust to gain the trust of the patient. Verbal communication should always include your visual cues because whatever we see, we do normally. And active listening, listen to patient story, tell the patient to explain their pain, explain their feelings in his or her own words, and then try to educate them about the pain neurosciences. So this is another diagram which says assess what the patient already knows and assess what the patient wants to know. It's very important to know what patient expects from you. Patient's expectation is very important. For few patients, just a 50% pain relief is the target, is the expectation, because they want mobility only even in the house. But for few patients, they want to run 6 kilometers per day with complete pain relief. So we really need to understand what patient expects from us and what already patient knows. The understanding, it's very important to understand patient's perception about pain and condition as well. Important to educate them about the prognosis of the condition, the number of sessions will be the required number of sessions, and other things like how to live with the pain if it is chronic. We need to educate. We have to be very realistic. We don't have to give any unrealistic goals to the patient, and we need to slow down. We need to keep it simple. Avoid medical terminologies with the patient because there are many people who says you have osteophyte in the knee. The pain, the cause of the pain is the osteophyte. Patient does not understand what is osteophyte. So we need to keep it simple. Make them understand with diagrams, videos, or other ways like the patient understands better with the visual feedback. So avoid using jargons or medical terminologies with the patient because then there will be a low cognitive acceptance. There will be low confidence, and again, patient won't be able to understand what you are saying. We should tell the truth to the patient. It should not be in a harsh manner, but we should tell the patient what is truth, what the exact picture is. Be hopeful, watch for visual cues, and sometimes be prepared for reaction. Because there are some people who are aggressive, and then we need. So now communication. Now we'll be seeing why it is important to communicate in an effective manner. Effective communication does not only improve the understanding between health professional and patient, but it can also have a positive impact on health outcomes. So it indirectly improves the compliance and cooperation of the patient. So if you are communicating in an effective manner, the cooperation of the patient automatically improves, and it improves adherence and satisfaction as well. So the researchers have given two pathways for the benefits of effective communication. The one is direct pathway, one is indirect pathway. So direct pathway is like listen, validate, show empathy. The three components: listen, validate, show empathy. Therapeutic. The talk is therapeutic, and then it improves the psychological well-being to the patient. It reduces the negative emotions like uh, fear, anxiety, and then positive emotions like hope, optimism, and self-worth. And non-verbal behaviors such as touch or tone of the voice may directly enhance the well-being by lessening the pathways. Indirect pathways include satisfaction with care, motivation to adhere, because indirectly the patient will be more satisfied. The patient will be motivated to do more exercises and or the prescribed exercises. The patient will be having more trust in clinician and the system. The self-efficacy or confidence in the self-care will be better. The clinician patient agreement or relationship will be the better, and there will be a shared. Now it's important to understand your patient before giving any patient education. So patient needs, patient concern, patient motivation, and readiness to learn, patient preferences, patient support network. So patient needs, what does patient need from you? Very important to assess patient, what does patient need from you? What are the main concern patient has? What patient's motivation and readiness? So if the patient is self-motivated and ready to learn, then it is better to, then we can add those things in the education program. Patient preferences, patient preference, written communication, uh, or verbal communication, or video form, or diagrammatic pictorial information. It's very important. And then patient support network. Patient has any support network or family support. And is there any barrier and limitation to learning? You need to find out that as well. One second, Himanshu. One second. Uncle, ये को ऐड बुक कर सकते हैं क्या? चार्जिंग actually there is some battery issue, I guess. Just excuse me for 2 minutes.
Okay, okay.
I think suddenly the battery of the laptop is dropped. It's showing 4%.
It's okay. We will get connected with the charger. No issue.
Done. Okay. So I was getting distracted because of the battery issue. Can we restart now?
Yeah.
Sorry for
Restart.
the
Go ahead.
interruption.
It's okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption.
Go ahead, madam. It's okay. That's fine.
So it's important to understand. Okay. So it's important to understand the patient needs, concern we discussed, and patient's barrier and limitation to learning, because there are certain mental health stages. The patient is in depression, anxiety, or the patient is anxious. So we need to understand the barriers why patient is not able to follow your advices. So very important to understand barriers from patient side as well. Is there any learning difficulties from patient side? Key factors of communication to improve health outcomes. We have already discussed some points from this. So your examination assessment should be clear. You should allow patient to talk. and you should respect the individuality and background, the tone, the level of language which you are using. You should use lay terms, not the medical terms with the patient to improve, to help them understand better. And you should respect the patient's space as well. Be open and create relaxed atmosphere. You should be attentive. Look at the patient when you're talking. So if you are looking here and then, if you are only distracted, the patient might feel that you are not interested in giving service. So you should be attentive, and you should provide a environment such that the privacy is maintained and it is like away from noise and interruption. So then other things, you should always use I statements like, I would really like you to do this exercise. I want to help. Should avoid using you in the sentence like, you really need to do this. Yeah, we have ordered it for you because we all care about you. Use statement often sound accusatory and can quickly alienate patients by provoking defensiveness and hostility. So avoid using you, instead use I in the sentence when you're communicating with patients. And you should remain calm and show empathy. And other thing, there are many people who they don't express properly. They When you are sitting face to face and when you're consulting face to face, they actually hesitate to express all their emotions, all their concern, all their chief complaints face to face. Many people prefer writing it and then discussing. Like, so we can encourage patient to write all the questions and prior to the appointment, and then we can facilitate conversation on the topics important to the patient. So this helps them also to like remember all their chief complaint, and then discussion can be facilitated. And if required, you can increase the duration of the visit to understand or address better multiple concern of the patient, or it depends on the therapist to increase the visit time or to increase the frequency of the visit, because to address shared decision making, patient centered interviewing, it's time consuming, so we need to consider time factor also. So barriers to communication. What are the barriers to communication? Speech abilities, language articulation, foreign language spoken. Like for me only, like if a patient who knows only Marathi comes to me, I find it difficult because my Marathi is not very strong. So if a patient comes to me with only other like Bhojpuri language, some people know only Bhojpuri and they are not very comfortable with English or Hindi. So it's difficult for us. So how to tackle such barriers? Dysphonia, it's like in language disorders, that is where the voice is not clear, or the time constraint on physician and patient. That sometimes patient does not have time, sometimes physician or therapist does not have time. So illness. So sometimes because of the illness, patient cannot communicate. And mental state, sometimes patient is too depressed or too anxious or some emotional imbalance, because of which patient cannot participate in the communication. We should always encourage patient to communicate, to engage, to participate in the communication. Then active, as I said earlier, active listening is the key. Gender difference. There are people who are not comfortable in talking to opposite gender, and their race and cultural issues also sometimes considered as a barrier to communication. How to overcome the barrier of effective communication? So we should try to connect with the audience. Should use simple words, body language, smile, eye contact, gesture, tone also influences your communication skills. Checking for understanding. You're just only talking, but not checking if the patient has understood what you have said. Seeking participation. Allow patients to participate during the communication. Allow them to speak. Effective questioning. Do not bombard them with too many questions, irrelevant questions. This effective questioning is also important. Summarizing what has been said, as I said earlier, you should give frequent summaries to the patient. Possible improvement. So Possible improvement, the practitioner should encourage patient to discuss their main concern without interruption or premature closure. Appropriate use of open-ended questions, frequent summaries, clarification, negotiation, which are the key factors which influence the quality and quantity of information gathered, and encourage collaborative communication. Should be a collaborative communication, collaborative goal setting, shared decision making, and with a good therapeutic relationship with the patient. Common mistakes what we do not introduce ourselves. We don't ask for clarification from the patient. We assume that patient has understood. We don't allow or encourage patient to ask questions. We don't ask question about patient's feeling. We just ask them rate your pain 0 to 10. We don't ask them how they are feeling. The pain is not always in numbers. It's about feeling. There are certain questionnaires can be used to uh, assess the pain, other components, the affective domain, the cognitive domain of the pain, the and not providing information in the form patient can use, because there are people who say you take a video or make a video of this session and then I can use it for my home access program. Some people are comfortable with an exercise task, or some people are like you just demonstrate it, I'll be able to remember. So it's patient's preference, what the patient needs. So if you're using loss, cognitive satisfaction, comprehension, and recall, it leads to patient dissatisfaction. We should understand the factors which leads to the dissatisfaction and try to work on it. Our responsibilities as a physiotherapist. So practitioners should practice effective self-management. So self-management is the key, making patients responsible for their own pain, own concern, own problem is is very crucial. So we need to practice effective self-management. We need to acknowledge and accept their emotional response to the patient and attempting to ensure personal well-being. So sometimes it's very important to take feedback from the patient on our communication skills. Like what do they feel about our communication skills? Or if you can take it from the staff, from the trusted patients, or the review or audio tapes from the patient's visit. So it helps us also to communicate better. Feedbacks are important. So now we'll be discussing the motivational interviewing. So there is a book on motivational interviewing by I don't remember the name. I have written in the reference. I'll just share it with you. So motivational interviewing with pain neurosciences education. The goal of the PNE is to optimize patient pain belief perception to facilitate the acquisition of adaptive pain coping strategies. So in PNE, we are working on pain coping strategies. We are reshaping the patient's belief about the pain. We are reducing the kinesiophobia. We are eliminating the catastrophizing nature of the pain. We are improving the patient's understanding about the multifactorial nature of the pain and the reconceptualizing the BPS model. So it is PNE. PNE always works with MI, that is motivational interview. So, and in motivational interviewing, on the other hand, it's a patient-centered communication style. It's not a technique, rather it's an approach for eliciting and enhancing motivation for behavior change by shifting the patient away from the state of indecision or uncertainty. So we are actually working, we are improving the cognitive and behavioral awareness of the patient through MI. So MI and PNE are actually a technique. So if you see the motivational interview we discussed earlier, we use motivational interview. And in pain neuroscience, we use neuroscience enhances patient knowledge about the pain. And DP aspect, that is, here we encourage coping by reducing perceived threat of pain and increasing their knowledge about pain. So outcome what we get from MI is cognitive and behavioral awareness, adherence to treatment principles. There will be more adherence to treatment, physiotherapeutic intervention through MI, and here the improvement will be in the kinesiophobia and pain catastrophizing. The patient will feel pain less, and there will be a better understanding about pain through pain neurosciences education. So we need to remember PACE. So MI spirit is described as 4 interrelated elements: PACE, partnership, acceptance, compassion, evocation. So partnership is a collaborating, guiding relationship with you and the client side by side instead of one in front of the other. So we should act as a partner to the patient, like I am your partner in this journey. It's a collaborative teamwork. So you have to guide patients, you have to become partner of the patient, and then you have to facilitate the positive emotions and facilitate the pain neurosciences education. And acceptance is includes autonomy support by emphasizing acceptance and respect of person's freedom of choice. It also includes expressing accurate empathy and supporting self-efficacy with an inherent appreciation for person's worth and affirming stance. So accepting what the person feels, accepting the person's choice, and then collaborating with your treatment intervention is acceptance. Compassion. It's a dedication to promote welfare of others, but it's a distinct from personal feeling of sympathy. It's not like sympathy. It's compassionate. If you are compassionate towards your uh, work, you're compassionate towards interviewing. So it's like it's not a personalized experience, but it's a dedication to promote health outcome. And evocation is the idea that client has inherent wisdom and strength for change that you draw out instead of thinking that you have a missing ingredient. So we need to understand that the strengths and abilities of the patient, and we need to encourage that, and then we need to it's the idea, like we have to understand, evoke that idea, like what patient, what is missing in it, and you must provide it. So can we swap glasses? It might help me to see your point of view. So we need to see patient through patient's eye. It's like that. And then I respect your autonomy. I just know I can make it better. So we need to make patient understand that we respect the autonomy and we are here to make them feel better. So this we have already spoken. This motivational interviewing is change talk, therapeutic alliance, the trans-theoretical model of stage of behavior change. Like I said earlier, we are working on the behavior and motivation in motivational interviewing, and treatment adherence improved in MI. And pain neurosciences, this also we discussed, changing pain beliefs, reconceptualizing pain. We are making patient understand about the multidimensionality of the pain. We are making them learn about coping strategies, and then outcome we get improved pain beliefs and behavior. Now you need to understand the OARS. So improving your communication skills by OARS skills. O stands for open-ended question, A affirmation, R reflective listening, S summarizing. So we should always ask open-ended questions to our patients. The core motivational interviewing skills are utilized by practitioner to help clinical situations. Affirmation should be always affirmative. Reflective listening. Reflective listening, we should listen more, and listen more from the patient. Make patient tell us the story, and then summarizing, like always give frequent summaries, like what we have understood from the patient's story. So these skills can help your patient to tell story in their own word, allow you to approach positive behavior change. We are working on the positive behavior change through MI. OARS is actually a component of MI, that is motivational interviewing. So it can be, we can approach positive behavior change through a structured and a balanced way. So why develop your motivational interviewing skills? Why it is important? First of all, it is low cost and usually results in fewer sessions. Efficacy, it triggers change in lifestyle behavior. And lifestyle behavior, changing in lifestyle behavior is important in pain management. And effectiveness is proven in research. There is need of more research studies in this, but we have a systematic review and meta-analysis on motivational interviewing. References I have given at the end of uh, the PPT. And then it requires clients' own resources. We don't have to do passively anything here. We've made the patient understand the concept, and we have educated, we have done an motivational interviewing about it, we have done CNE. So then patient is accountable for own uh, own concerns and own chief complaints. And then self-management can be facilitated with this. And then it is compatible with our own healthcare delivery, does not result in long-term dependency, and it enhances adherence to treatment plan and improved health outcome and self-efficacy. So this we have spoken: therapeutic alliance, active listening, and motivational interviewing. Semantics: positive language versus nocebic language. You should avoid using nocebic and negative language to the patient, because it indirectly affects it directly affects the negative self-efficacy belief. So agreement, the therapeutic alliance, the Bodin describes three components that contributes to strong therapeutic alliance. Agreement on the goal, whatever goal you have actually chosen for the patient, there should be a collaborative goal setting. This I have thought for you, and tell me your preferences, tell me your expectations, so that we can work on it together. Agreement on intervention, shared decision making. Interventions like any intervention, like any physiotherapeutic intervention, effective bond between patient and therapist. Commonly asked questions, like what we ask. So I want you all also to write about commonly asked questions uh, in the comments, like what questions you all ask during an interview, or what questions you all ask during in communication with patients with pain. So, so we can discuss this later. Commonly asked questions. It's identify barrier, action oriented. Like I understand how difficult it is to change, and we are in this together. For me to be successful, you must be too. How can I help you overcome? So we should make patient understand that you are with the patient in this journey, and what are the possible ways patient can think to overcome the barriers. And then there are certain patients who only focuses on problem. So we need to distract patients from the problem, and then we need to make them focus on the progress. So what can we say? We say, let's focus on your progress for a moment. Since our last visit, your diary shows that you have progressed a lot, that can make progress. So we are distracting patient from the pain, and we are making them understand that you have progressed a lot, and yes, functionally you are better, and it's not always pain is not in numbers always, it's on the functional improvement as well. So we need to highlight the progress and the improvement of the patient. So, and when you have pain all the time, it is common to think that you're not getting better. Let me point out the things we have been improved. Again, the distracting patient from the pain and concentrating on the positive aspect of the treatment outcome. So, I'm hearing that you think what I'm saying is valuable, yet you're not able to follow through. What do you think what is about? Sometimes patient is not able to follow what you are saying. And then we need to ask them, like, what do you think this is about? Why are you not able to follow? Tell me your problem. We should be caring and empathetic in understanding patients' concerns as well. I'm hearing some resistance. Can you think of better way of approaching your goal? If you think then patient is not very satisfied with your treatment intervention, or patient is not very satisfied with your approach, so you can ask them only, like, what do you think is a better way of approaching our goal? Because if we can also ask them, like, if you ever had this pain before, what was your experience? How did you cope? What did you learn? Then from those data we can actually form the goal, and we can change our the consultation style or our goal settings according to the patient. Sometimes issues get in the way of patient's ability to get better. So do you have other stresses in your life that are affecting your pain? So it's important to make patient understand how emotion and pain is interrelated. So if the patient is having pain but not responding to treatment, so then we need to understand the other factors which are influencing, aggravating, precipitating the pain. So we need to make them understand these factors. Focused questioning is important. So we should ensure that there is no language or no cultural barrier. So let's spend a few minutes using this pain scale so that we can better understand your pain together. Then explain to me, let the patient explain the pain in his or her own words. And you ask them, well, what do you think is wrong with you in your own words? And sometimes it's difficult to manage chronic pain, and we all know the chronic pain and the biopsychosocial factors. The chronic pain has affection. BPS has a major role in chronic pain. Even in acute pain, the BPS has role. And sometimes it is difficult to express yourself. Next time, try writing down that we discussed, writing down all the concern or writing a letter. So then we will go over it together. So writing, people are comfortable in writing their concerns or writing their questions, writing their chief complaint. Encourage them to write. Then let's both take a deep breath and try starting with what your pain feels like at this moment. So look at this scale with the word description. Tell me where you're on this. So if you have pain with a word description, like how you're feeling, the pain description, so then you can tell them, just tell me where you are on it. And make them understand why communication is our best tool for working on the pain. Make them understand the benefits of communication as well. So they'll be able to tell you better, they'll be able to open up in front of you. Then sometimes expectations are clear. Some people say, I want 100% pain relief in one session. So expectations, we need to be realistic, and we need to tell them that what do you really expect and what are the realistic goals we have for you. Now, factors that influence patient-therapist relation. So we need to understand what are the factors that influence patient and therapist relation. So like characteristic of a doctor, gender, level of experience, personality. So level of experience the patient, sometimes, as I said earlier, there's opposite gender people are not very comfortable. If the level of experience is the patient, I'm not saying that the patient, doctor is pressure, so then it will affect the patient therapist relation. Not like that, but there are some factors which affects the communication, and personality also matters. The characteristic of patient, again, social class, age, education, literacy level, the age of the patient. If the patient is very old, the patient is very young, then also it affects the patient therapist relationship. So the people of our age, same age, so if the doctor is of our age, we'll be more comfortable in communicating with the same age doctor, maybe. And then class, if the socioeconomic level of the patient also matters, and difference in terms of social class, education, attitude, beliefs, and expectations. Important to address attitude, beliefs of the patient. Situational factors like patient's load, level of acquaintance, nature of problem. So if there is patient load to the therapist or doctor, the level of acquaintance, nature of problem, then also it affects patient-therapist relationship. Time management is also one key to avoid to make good rapport with the patient. Consultation style. So the professional centered approach is the old traditional style where therapist keeps control of the consultation, asks direct questions, and the main decision maker is the therapist, and the patient passively accept whatever the therapist is saying. And then This is an old style. Nobody follows this, I guess. The second is patient-centered consultation, where the therapist identifies and works with the patient's agenda, as well as the own therapist actively listens, professional and encouraging communication, listening to patient's view, understanding of health. Patient is an active participation in the business. So in patient-centered consultation, we give importance to patient. Patient is an active participation. We listen to patient's view. We encourage patient to communicate, and we actually give importance to patient agenda as well. So this is the patient-centered consultation which many of us are already doing. The third is shared decision making, and this is actually we this consultation style also many people must be doing. Here it's similar to the patient-centered consultation style, but here we are involving patient and understanding the ideas and taking into account effective component gaining improved prominence in healthcare policy. So here we are actually involving patient in decision making of the goals, plans, and physiotherapeutic intervention. So this is shared decision making and evidence-based patient choice. It's actually a mixture of shared decision making and evidence-informed choice. So it's a newly emerging template, and then it's combination of evidence-informed choice and shared decision making. So we are actually looking for the evidence of the intervention which we are providing, and then with the shared decision making, we are implementing the intervention. So what's your consultation style? You should think like, what am I doing out of these four? Where am I standing? And how can I improve my consultation style? And for better consultation, your effective communication plays an important role. So summary. So communication has major impact on adherence to treatment and patient satisfaction, as we have seen. For effective patient-therapist communication, there should be mutual respect, exchange of ideas, just not one-sided. And patient satisfaction and consultation preference can be influenced by demographic variables. For an ideal consultation, therapists realistically need to figure out and tailor their approach with each different patient depending on their preference. Understanding of motivational interviewing, self-efficacy, therapeutic alliance is important. Remember OARS. O stands for open-ended question, affirmation, and reflective listening and summarizing. And then PACE. P stands for partnership, acceptance, compassion, evocation. So we have up till now what we have covered. We have covered domains. We have covered benefits of effective communication, barriers of effective communication, how to overcome the barriers, and then key components in effective communication. We have also discussed the evidence-informed communication style, that is motivational interviewing, its factors, its components, the PNE, pain neurosciences education. Now, and also few examples which we commonly encountered in day-to-day practice. So take-home message. The evidence suggests that when patients engage in a collaborative care, shared decision-making, self-management, they have improved health outcomes. And for example, training patients with chronic disease to self-manage their disease is effective in increasing functioning, reducing pain, and reducing healthcare. So we should encourage self-management. We should not rely on passive and dependent modalities. And we should train patients to take responsibility of their own health. We should treat patient holistically. We should work on general well-being of the patient. And then when the patient has greater sense of self-efficacy, confidence in their knowledge, and ability to perform self-care management, they are more likely to engage in those behaviors. So if you want to improve the self-efficacy and confidence level in the patient, make them understand about it via effective communication skills, via PNE, pain neurosciences education. So just by exerting more control over doctor-patient interaction, just you need to polish your communication skills, so patients have been shown to have better outcomes. So we need to coach patients to be more involved and to have more control in medical encounters. It has been shown to produce better health and functioning in the patient. The study by Hibbert 2013. These are the references have been used in the presentation. So the book I was talking about, this Dr. Miller PhD, Dr. Rolnick PhD, Motivational Interviewing in Healthcare is an excellent book. And again, the behavioral method of chronic pain, Dr. Poddy's behavioral method of chronic pain is also an excellent book. If you want to read further, you can read these books and the few articles I have used. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot for your kind words and great learning for the day. So definitely the communication strategies, it will work in the rapport formation with the patient while dealing, and definitely it will improve. While it has been incorporated with the pain neuroscience education, we can have more improved quality of life in the patient. So, ma'am, can we take some questions?
Yeah, sure.
So, can you see the chat box? I should narrate for you.
Chat
Okay.
box.
Okay, I'm narrating. Don't worry.
I don't see chat box.
Yeah. There's one question. How the communication strategies are different while dealing with the pediatric, adult, and geriatric population? Is there any difference, or would be the same?
Okay. So the pediatric population, the communication is mainly with the parent. So we are communicating, it depends on the age of the child. If the child is able to comprehend what you are saying, so then we can educate them. And adults, all these communication strategies is applicable on adults. And geriatrics, considering the physiology of the aging and considering the detrimental effect of aging on various systems, we can actually, the communication style is actually differs from patient to patient. It's not like if I'm communicating with a 48-year-old man and other 48-year-old men, so the communication might be different for both 48-year-old men. So it is patient centered. So it depends on the literacy of the patient, age of the gender or gender cultural awareness, and other factors also. So there are many factors which we need to consider before communicating, not just age.
So, ma'am, there is one more question from Ganeshan sir. So, is body language also a part of communication or not?
Body language is definitely a part of communication. The way you present yourself, gestures, postures, that actually reflects like your readiness to share the information, and your attentiveness to body language plays important role in communication.
Okay. Ma'am, there is one more question from Dr. Sandeep. Dr. Sandeep is asking that how we can identify the chronic pain issues and masking or psychological pain issue due to other problems.
Pardon? Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. How we can identify the chronic pain issues and masking or psychological pain issues due to other problems.
So if there is a psychological involvement, so then the patient might have some past history of psychological involvement or psychiatric illness, the family history of psychiatric illness, and then patient presentation will be different. So we need to do a BPS, biopsychosocial assessment for that. And as per the BPS assessment, we need to see that these emotional and psychological differences are due to chronic pain or due to psychiatric disorder. So then wisely we need to refer it to a psychologist or psychiatrist as per the patient condition. So BPS assessment is required.
Okay. So one more query from the Ganeshan sir. Can we please suggest any questionnaire to evaluate the communication from the patient? Is there any
Questionnaire to
questionnaire?
evaluate communication.
Yeah.
Evaluate communication to communication skills, right? Can you please repeat the question?
Can you please suggest any questionnaire to evaluate communication from patients?
Communication from patient.
Yeah.
I am not aware of any such questionnaire, so I'll read on it. If then if there is any, I'll share it.
Okay. There's one more. There's one more question, ma'am, from Jiten sir from Delhi. So, how would you perceive empathy and compassion while treating the patient during telephysiotherapy? Great question.
Empathy and compassion while treating patient from
Telephysiotherapy, yeah, telerehabilitation.
So telerehabilitation, yes, it's not difficult because we will be video conferencing with the patient and we will be communicating the way we are communicating face to face. So we will be asking questions. We have to show empathy. We have to show compassion towards the patient. It's not we have to evaluate empathy from the patient. We are the one who has to show the empathy. We are the one who has to show the compassion to make patients feel comfortable, to make patients feel relaxed. So to make patients feel that we concern for the patient. So if it's from us, so how can we evaluate empathy and compassion from patient's aspect?
Okay, there's one more question. How we can redirect the patient when patient will start irrelevant to the medical condition or non-medical relevant conversation?
Can you repeat the question?
How we can stop or redirect the patient when they start non-medically relevant conversations?
Okay, so we can politely tell them, okay, sir, madam, let's focus on this problem first, and then we can discuss that problem later because this is the main chief complaint, and we need to focus on this. Simple.
Right. Thank you. And the last question, I guess, is there any effectiveness of the communication in the systemic illnesses?
In the systemic illnesses.
Yeah.
So I think the basic foundation remains same, and then as per the condition specific question can be added. If it is diabetes or if it is other conditions like the motivational interviewing has been effective in diabetes, stroke, chronic musculoskeletal pain. There are n number of researches on MI specifically to conditions. So if anybody is interested, can check articles. I have given in the references. So stroke related, diabetes related, musculoskeletal pain, systemic condition I have not encountered yet. But yes, if required, we can add questions related to the particular condition. But I think the basic foundation remains same of effective communication.
Okay. There is one practical question that whenever advocating the long sessions, how would one justify the time given to all if it's a very busy OPD?
With the busy OPD.
Yeah. So how we can justify the time given to all the patients? Because the effective communication definitely will need some more time to talk about the condition and all. So
I think the first assessment, first consultation requires more time. So we can make patient understand that is the first assessment. I need to understand your concern, beliefs, and your condition. So then follow-up visits won't take much time. So if we are allotting or giving appointment to the patient for the first time, then we should give a long duration appointment to that particular patient. If the patient is follow-up patient, we already know the patient. So then it won't consume much time. So then time management is also equally important. We cannot just take hours and hours in consultation. Effective questioning, focused questioning is important.
Okay, ma'am. So there is one more question. Is there any role of communication with the caregiver and attender? Is this plays a role in recovery of the patient?
Yes. So I've seen mainly in the home care settings, like we involve patients, relatives, caregivers also in the treatment. So sometimes they are also frustrated with the if the illness is chronic or if the illness is persistent. So then the caregivers, relatives, and family members have psychological influence as well. So we need to tackle, we need to counsel them, we need to make them also understand about the patient's condition and other factors.
I think we are having a lot of queries. Means we were listening very carefully in the session, and it shows, yes, this was a very interactive session and highly informative session that we have really continuously joined this very sincerely, and it also shows the sincerity of the participants here. So, ma'am, I think
Yeah.
we'll take one two more question only. The
Okay.
So there is a question. Is there any role of non-verbal communication also in the communication skills? Any suggestion for
Yes,
non-verbal communication?
non-verbal communication involves touch, tone. So touch, we need to be careful because some people does not like we touching. So it should be therapeutic touch. You should understand the difference between a normal touch and a therapeutic touch. So it should be a therapeutic touch, and it's a non-verbal form of communication. Like we care for the patient, we have concern for the patient. So with a therapeutic touch, because the patient understand what type of touch it is. So therapeutic touch and a tone. If you are very aggressive, if you have high tone, then the patient has negative influence. So you need to modulate your voice quality as well as per the patient's preference.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot for kind elaboration and a
Thank
great
you
elaboration
everyone
of
for
the question.
patiently listening as well.
Yes, ma'am. It was a great session, and we definitely will try to imply something in our clinical practice while communicating with the patient. And definitely, it has various researches available on the PNE and the communication strategies. And now this is a part of essential skill which should be considered while dealing with the patient, and it has a greater impact we see normally. So, good topic and a very great explanation by the good speaker. So we are really grateful to you, ma'am, that you have uh, covered the topic and you have elaborated well in the session. And interestingly, we are having very good compliments on the session from the very senior faculty members present here. So it is again a matter of honor for us that being a young physiotherapist, young budding physiotherapist, and a very dynamic personality here in front of the very senior professionals and academicians joining us, and still if we are getting the good compliments, means there is something which is different from others. So it is again a message for the other young professionals. We should try doing the things we can make the difference in the society, even the physiotherapy professionals. So again, heartful thank to you, ma'am.
Thanks to you too.
And I would
Thanks to
like
you too. Thank you.
to say thanks to the all the participants who are joining us, and it is my honor to tell you that we have joined here with my faculty members Charu ma'am from Washington, USA, Ritu Rajdeep ma'am, Harsh Rajdeep sir, and Jaswinder Singh sir. They all are my teachers, and all are having more than 20 years of the clinical as well as academic experience. Along with them, we have other senior faculty members present over here. Dr. Jitan Munjal sir, he is a senior physiotherapist in the North DMC Medical College, Delhi. Dr. Kalpana Jutsi ma'am, she is professor there in the Jamia Hamdard, Delhi. And alongside, we have also joined with the Amita Anup Sharma ma'am. She is a senior physiotherapist in the Dubai. K. Ganeshan sir, well-known personality in the field of physiotherapy, and the great person, the certified instructor of the Pilates, and there are a lot of things about the K. Ganeshan sir. And we also have done 2 sessions with the Ganeshan sir, so they were also listening, and they have also joined the session. And the Poonamati ma'am. So Poonamati ma'am is from SRM University, Chennai. So it is a matter of indeed pleasure and honor for us that we had a young budding physiotherapist as a resource person here, and a senior person who has given a great compliments. So it is actually a power of physiotherapy, I would say. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Again, at last, there is information. We'll meet again tomorrow at 4 p.m. for the session on evolution of the menstrual hygiene by Dr. Dhara. So we'll meet. Please remember the time. The time is different. It is tomorrow 4 p.m., not 9 p.m. So we'll be together tomorrow at the 4 p.m. Again, heartfelt thanks to all the teachers and senior faculty members present over here. And we are really grateful to you. And Jubeda ma'am, we are really grateful to you and hope for the such contribution in future too. And you are really great. Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thanks to you too for an apt arrangement. Thanks to you too.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Stay tuned. Good night. We'll meet tomorrow again. Bye-bye.